Hi, my name's Eddie, and I went to an amazing event by BEEqual. BEEqual stands for Balanced, Empowered, Equal. Their meetup community and Slack group aims to bring everyone who wants to make the tech industry more inclusive and diverse together to push towards that common goal so we can all benefit. This talk is by Jake. He is a diversity and inclusion expert. Jake's talk covers that more and more statistics keep getting released every week, and companies are becoming more aware that there is a problem and the benefits of having diversity and being a more inclusive company and culture. But one thing that is highlighted is at these great events where we talk about how to get better and learn from each other, where are all the men? Why are 95% minorities at these events? I hope you enjoyed the educational presentation and the entertaining side of the presentation too, like I did. It was really good. Thank you very much.
Right, whilst you clearly sick of my voice, I'm going to hand over to the amazing Jake Hobson, who was, we've got some exciting news here, head of D&I at Hyperion, but has recently gone out on his own as a D&I consultant. So without further ado, where is all the men? You're held up, aren't you?
I think so.
Excellent.
Thanks everyone. Thanks Harry for the welcome. And so when I was writing this speech, I was like, it's going to be 90% women, definitely. And so you kind of proved me wrong. So this might be a bit null and void speech, but let's go with it. When Harry and I were discussing the topic for this evening's talk, we were kind of saying around, well, where are all the men in the conversation? And I was pretty hesitant, if I'm honest, with speaking about this, partly because public speaking is not my natural forte, but the main reason is that I'm quite tired of talking to the same kinds of people, the people that really get that D&I is good for business, that having broader diversity will bring greater results, but it's obviously only provided that we underpin that with inclusive behaviours and inclusive cultures. When I say the same kinds of people, I'm not saying that you all follow me around like Beyonce has an entourage, although I do a really good single ladies rendition if you want to see it after this. What I describe this whole kind of the whole D&I conversation is very much is that all of us get this. We're in this echo chamber. I guess this echo chamber is that we tend to fall and listen to people that get this, think similarly, and I guess it's an example that affinity bias is live and kicking, and it's happening on a really grand scale. We always end up at these types of events together. And these echo chambers that I talk about, I find myself in them on social media, on Twitter especially, where I end up following similar types of people, or people where I'm like, okay, you tweet similar kind of stuff to me. But sometimes I kind of want to challenge my own perceptions. I will dabble and go into MAGA Twitter, despite my absolute abstain for Donald Trump. But I want to kind of find out what is it that they're talking about, to challenge my own view and my own perspective. I'm yet to get a breakthrough, but it's better than watching Love Island as far as I'm concerned. There's never been more discussion around diversity and inclusion in the workplace. Every week, ever more statistics, stories and initiatives are swirling around, from the gender pay gap differentials to the Me Too fallout, to unconscious bias training, focus on having more diverse company boards. And so it seems every single company is talking about diversity and inclusion, and that they finally grasp that change needs to happen. But progress is painfully slow, and in some respects we've halted, and in other respects we're going backwards. If you look at some of the LGBT acceptance and stories that have kind of come out over recent times, we're going backwards in some of those things. I often get invited to attend at D&I events or speak at D&I events on either gender equality or different aspects of it. And there's normally a handful of men that do attend. But increasingly and perfectly reasonably, someone will put their hand up and say, well, where are all the men? The cynic in me says, in a boardroom somewhere? I don't mind. But it's a really valid question. And my view is that currently too many gender diversity initiatives mean that women get together to talk about change, but all too frequently no real change happens. The converted, as all of us are, we're preaching to ourselves, supporting each other, maybe influencing each other to a certain extent by starting discussions, but ultimately we're all failing to make real meaningful change that's going to affect long-term organisational-wide progress. So the question kind of comes back to the topic. So why aren't men actively engaged in diversity and inclusion? Here's my take for it, and as Victoria Beckham said in that amazing film, Spice World the movie, hold on to your knickers, girls. So, I wrote this after a gym, come on. So over the last 100 years, women have increasingly and rightly gained more rights and have really kind of advanced the kind of conversation through either seeking guidance from women who've navigated the patriarchy or some forward-thinking men. But women have, we've been really taught around what it means, what it takes to work in a man's world. What it means to be a man has changed, ultimately, and we've not invested in helping men understand what this new era of men, of masculinity is. And so what we've ended up is this result where it's coined as toxic masculinity. And I can kind of see how we've got here. As kids, boys typically lack positive male role models because gender stereotypes exist and are hardwired into heterosexual relationships. Boys end up being over-mothered and under-fathered because money still needs to be earned and men need to be the breadwinner and women's responsibilities are to be the caregiver. And so boys grow up where they see women as carers of them and they serve their needs and perpetuating a view that women should be at home caring rather than in a boardroom or in the workplace. Men, in my view, grow up to be just big boys. And my mum can definitely vouch for this. She often introduces my dad as a 6-year-old toddler, just because of how he acts at times. But joking aside, we say that we want gender balance, but there's a vast number of inequalities that men experience. The biggest killer of men under the age of 45 is suicide. 80% of all suicides that happen are men. And that, in the UK, equates to about 84 people per week. Now, there's about 40 of us here today. So imagine double the size of this room, and that's the weekly amount of men that are ending their lives and losing their battle through suicide. And this reason could be attributed to a number of different things, but I think the lack of positive male role models in the early years where you're forming a lot of your life skills and how you deal with things, and it has an influence on how men talk about what's going on for them. They don't necessarily see that they can talk to other men, which when they go into their adult life, they tend to typically, because of affinity bias, surround themselves with other men. And there's also the other gender stereotype that plays out where men are told to man up, be tough, not be a pansy. And maybe the lack of positive male role models in the early years contributes to the fact that men are more likely to end up in a life of crime than women, and men are more likely to end up homeless. And so there's no surprise that in those intersecting groups, suicide is even higher for those people as well. And another fact that I found whilst doing research for this was that men are just as likely to be diagnosed with prostate cancer as women are for breast cancer. However, the level of funding that prostate cancer receives is half. And so, in turn, the advancement is not there, and men are losing their lives through prostate cancer because they are not getting the same amount of investment. Whilst the issues that men experience are completely different to what women experience in the workplace, we cannot pretend that we care about gender balance when we're not improving the lives of everybody, and that includes those of non-binary genders. Masculinity is changing. Men are being encouraged to throw off the shackles of traditional masculinity and embrace their emotions. Boys are growing up in a world where gender is less binary, and equality is at the heart of the discussions, which all will create a better world. And many men in the workplace today do want change in theory, but even the most open-minded of men don't really know how or what to do. They've got nobody to ask. They're unfairly characterised as the problem, which presents them with a zero-sum game, which to play is to lose. They need help. Men see the gender-focused events are not for them, or they might be taking places that are suitable for women. And so, or there's the other side of it where men have absolutely no interest in diversity initiatives because it's nothing to do with them. In 2017, Ernest Young, a large survey that they did around this whole topic, and found that over a third of respondents felt that increased conversations around diversity tend to overlook men, white men typically. And of the 35% of people who shared this belief, 49% of respondents felt that white men were excluded from diversity programs, and 26% of respondents believed that white men are not included in mentorship or training programs. So counterintuitive as it may seem, focusing on men to help them understand the barriers to workplace diversity and providing them with practical strategies to effect change is likely to be more effective than focusing on women who already understand all too well the challenges that they face and are less well placed to make a difference. And we've seen that open conversation has a huge impact. The LGBT+ community have made huge strides over the last 50 years in engaging in open conversation with straight people around what does this mean? And yes, there's still some work to be done on this, but also we've seen it with Martin Luther King, where he had the infamous "I Have a Dream" speech, and also the Black Lives Matter movement. And I'm not saying that these things, that it's a picture-perfect situation, because both communities still experiencing harrowing levels of racism, biphobia, transphobia, and homophobia, but the discussion started, and that's what's really important if we're going to make any progress in this conversation. And so whilst it's easy for me to stand here and talk at you, I'm sure you're probably wanting something a little bit more tangible that you might be able to kind of take away. But when I was doing my research and asking my network of other D&I practitioners, it became really hugely apparent that not many companies and not many places are doing that much in engaging men in the conversation. One example that I have seen, which is great, is Spotify. Spotify is a Swedish company, and they implemented, using their Swedish values, a global parental leave policy where you get 6 months full pay with a 7th month to transition back to work. And 100% of their people that have taken advantage of this policy that they have there returned and stayed. And 90% of people that utilised it in the United States were men. Across the globe, it's 67% of men are utilising this because men want to take a more active role in their parenting commitments. And it isn't just the cool tech companies that are doing some great stuff. Another example to actively engage men in the discussion is from The Telegraph, the newspaper. They're running a series of flexible father workshops where they are overcoming and educating men on what it means to work flexibly and really overcoming that stigma that flexible working is a women's thing. And the results have shown to be working, and men are coming forward and engaging in the discussion and sharing their own experiences where they've experienced hostility when they go to pick up the kids and the teachers say to them, "Is the mother not available?" Or the other side of it where if they're the secondary caregiver, they may be a stay-at-home father or they take on a lot more of the responsibilities, they don't get invited by the other mums to play dates, and so they end up being isolated, which can then contribute to mental ill health. What they are saying is that D&I is starting to feel that it's about us, it's about us too, and they can see the other side on how this is going to work. And let's not forget this whole conversation. So whilst I focus on gender, it's really important that we start to think about trans women, or trans people, people with disabilities, people of colour, people with different sexual orientations, and really take an intersectional approach and listen to those voices. If you are a white woman in here, you are afforded a level of privilege that if you're a trans woman, you might not necessarily experience. You might not necessarily experience that if you're a person of colour or if you're differently abled. If we're not being inclusive of all of us, then we're not being truly inclusive. And I know that engaging men in this conversation feels a little bit like defeating one of Voldemort's Horcruxes. But if we don't, then this is probably as good as it's going to get. We need the excluded majority on board, and that's a fact. And there's no silver bullet to D&I. We wouldn't be here, I'd be out of a job, I'd be doing something very different, probably on a cruise ship somewhere, if I crack it. Looking at our policies and our procedures will help, and bias training will help, but until men engage in this conversation, it's going to be the hardest time. And I don't have all the answers to this, but I do have some suggestions that all of us can take away today that will start to engage the excluded majority. So be the change you want to see. So make sure that you're role modelling the inclusive leadership that you want to see from men, and don't forget that working with men on issues creates learning opportunities as well. Challenge your own assumptions about men's intentions and ability and willingness, or lack of, to take active roles in fostering gender equality. Recognise that men also experience bias and have aspects of their identity beyond their maleness. Just like women, men experience societal expectations around gender and what it means to be a man, which may be challenging. Intentionally invite men. This is a really big one. If you're going to a D&I event, bring your boss, bring someone along with you, engage them in the conversation, because that's the only way we're ever going to start to diversify these type of learning opportunities and to hear a different perspective. Listen to men of colour's experiences. Men of colour can be really strong allies in the gender equality discussion and creating inclusion, which cannot exist without encouraging and engaging people of all different aspects. Be prepared, this is a big one, but be prepared for men to make mistakes, and it's okay for men to make mistakes. It's a learning opportunity, but let's correct them, let's educate them rather than persecute them for what they're doing, because sometimes they might not even know that they've done something wrong. When you witness well-intentioned men as well that are either reproducing inequalities or abusing male privilege, call them out in a non-accusation manner. It's simple to do. Did you know that that's not something that I've normally seen you to do? Or, oh, this is not normally like you. Something really simple as that. And then the final one is really mentoring male colleagues to develop their awareness around gender and racial dynamics and busting stereotypes by showing positive male and racially diverse role models. And that goes on to lots of different other aspects of diversity as well. That's all from me. I'm going to be joining the panel, so if you've got any questions, then you're more than welcome to answer them as well.